Hi, this is Marsha.
And this is Kelly.
We are the 2U's of 2U's Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at 2usfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our 2U's Fiber Adventures group on Ravelry. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Ravelry, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Marsha.
How are you today?
I'm doing all right. The sun is finally coming out. I would say if you want to travel to my neck of the woods, don't come in April.
Oh.
April's not, I don't think April is that good of a weather month for the Monterey Bay area.
Mm-hmm.
It's cold. It's very coastal feeling this morning, that cold ocean breeze and overcast. And the sun is now finally coming out. So maybe I'll get my hat and my fleece vest off at some point today.
Well, we are having beautiful weather in Seattle.
So that's good.
I haven't checked the temperature, but warm, sunny, blue sky. Yeah, no rain in the forecast. I think it's going to be up to 70.
Oh, nice.
I don't know what that is in Celsius for those who are on Celsius. But
30. Somebody in the Ravelry group posted, and they said they have like milestones, like body temperature is 37.
Okay.
I think they said 30 degrees was like a 70-degree day. Now, I may be totally wrong on that, but I'm just doing that from memory. And then, of course, 0 is freezing, and below 0 is nobody wants to feel that.
Anyway, yes. Beautiful. So I have Mark came up and helped me move the patio furniture up onto the deck. So we've been sitting in the furniture, and we got the umbrellas out yesterday. And
wow,
we've had you probably saw my Instagram post that I painted the south side of the garage. Mm-hmm. Well, primer and first coat yesterday. I have to do the second coat.
You today. And Robert. So I just have to ask, did you vacuum it before you primed it?
Oh, well, Ben power washed it for me.
Okay. Because I looked out at vacuum one point when Robert was, and he's got the vacuum up on the roof of the garage and a paintbrush, like to brush off cobwebs and stuff. Like, oh my gosh, he is meticulous.
He is meticulous, but he's doing it the right way.
Yes, yeah, no, I have no complaints. Because I just have to laugh when I see. I mean, like, who in the world?
Yeah.
Who looks out their window and sees someone vacuuming the garage wall?
Well, I have to say, I did not vacuum it, but as I say, Ben went out and power washed the south side. And then what started this whole thing, I probably talked about this, but what started the whole thing is he was super excited about power washing, and he power washed the driveway. And I said, well, why don't you power wash my pots, the planter pots, which he did. And then on the south side of the driveway where I have the tomatoes, the neighbors have a fence. So it creates shade like from the pots down. So it's super mossy. There's like an inch of moss over there. And he was, could hardly wait to get over there and attack the moss. He power washed that whole walkway, power washed the pots. I said, well, then if I'm pulling the pots away, because they're so heavy, I take all the soil out, which is now piled up in front of the garage, so I can't get my car in the garage. If we're going to do all this, I should paint the garage, because the garage has not been painted, I don't know, 15, 20 years? Yeah. I don't know, a long time. I don't remember when it was painted.
Well, and that's what led Robert to paint, was that he wanted to get the garage painted before the grape came back. He pruned it, so it was all pruned back, and you can actually see the garage wall. And he knew, within a couple of weeks that was all going to start leafing out again. And so he was like, okay, I got to get this garage wall painted.
Yeah.
So good to do it while the pots are out of the way.
Yeah. But then I have a tendency when it's like, just put the paint on there. It's okay. And it's like, no, my father was a painter. And I can't do that. Yeah. So I as I say, Ben power washed it. I primed it. I put my first coat on. And I'm going to go put the second coat on. So that's the right way to do it. Now, all of this, that was just one side of the garage. I have, it's a rectangle. Right. So I have 3 more sides.
Yeah, but that's the west side. So that's one of the sides that gets the most.
No, it's actually the south side.
That's right.
Yeah, it's the south side. Yeah. But my parents built that garage. And my father taught me how to put the shingles on it. So it has cedar shingles from probably 1968. And he showed me how to nail shingles onto the side of the garage. So when I was, I was probably 10. And I sided, at the age of 10, I sided the south side of the garage.
That's cool.
I did. Anyway, and he told me how, like, you put a double row at the first row is at the bottom is a double row, double thickness. And how to use the, now I don't even remember what they're called. Is it a snap line? A chalk line?
Oh, yeah.
To get so that they're all even. And so I was out there painting them, and I thought, I did a pretty good job at the age of 10.
That's nice, yeah.
Child labor.
Exactly. Exactly.
But I remember as a kid thinking it was really fun.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
It was super fun. So
I remember.
He showed me how to do it, and then he left me on my own out there one day, and I just did the whole thing. But I will say, I'm not 10 anymore, and I painting, so primer and then the first coat, my right hand holding the brush. I can't hold. In fact, I intentionally did not buy as big a brush as my dad would have used. He had like an 8-inch brush they would use. My hand can't hold that,
Yeah.
So I have a smaller brush. But by the end of the day, my right hand was really sore, and my left elbow, I've pinched a nerve or something in there. Or done something, and I think what it is now with my left hand is, or my left elbow is holding the paint pot.
Oh, yeah.
Just imagine holding something in your hand all day.
Right.
like that. And I think it's affected my elbow. Yeah. I'm a wreck.
Well, even with all of that, you still are able to knit, right?
Yes, I'm working on socks right now as
good.
we're recording. So I'm still able to knit. Yeah.
All right.
So anyway, enough home improvement. Should we talk knitting?
Yeah. What are you working on?
Well, I'm working on my socks, just the vanilla socks. In fact, I don't even have it in the show notes. It's the let's see, what yarn is this? It's the Fabel yarn that remember we bought it down. I'm reaching over to my bag to grab the label when we went to San Luis Obispo years ago for the yarn crawl.
Oh, right.
And
that was fun.
This is Drops Fabel Print. I've talked about this before, but not for a while. This is the second sock, and I'm just starting the heel flap. It's an easy project.
Yeah.
So since I'm talking about these, should I just talk about my projects?
Sure, yeah, that's a good idea.
Because I don't have much to report. I've been periodically picking up the Walk Along Tea by Ankestrick, and I really have not progressed much since we last talked. In fact, I have to tell you, I listened to the last 2 episodes while I was painting the garage, and knowing that we were going to record today, thinking, well, there's not much more to report. I think I've knit 4 more rows since we last talked. So, but as I say, there's been so many projects here. And I should say too, not much knitting got done last week because Ben had his wisdom teeth taken out. And so last Wednesday, a week ago, so there was a lot of up and down the stairs changing ice packs and making milkshakes and getting him to take pain meds. He alternated between ibuprofen and Tylenol. So I have not made a huge amount of progress on that. And then the Abington Mitts also haven't even picked them up.
You jinxed them when you said you hope they're not like your skull.
They are like my skull. But as I'm out there listening to the podcast, the last episode, while I was painting, we reiterated the deadline for the extremities knit, crochet, macrame along. And I need to get going.
Yes.
Because
April
it's
25th, right?
Yeah. So I need to get going. So I'm so close. I just have to do the thumb.
Right. So yes, don't jinx yourself.
Yeah. So you know what I also, when I listen back to myself, this is what I always say. I'm going to do that tonight. I'm not saying that because that seems to jinx me too.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
But the one thing I have been working on though is the spinning. So I have made 3 more skeins. I plied 3 skeins of yarn. So I now have a total of 5, which is a little over 700 yards. And I think I'm going to get at least 2 more skeins and maybe a bit more. But I had the idea that I was going to make a sweater out of this, the green and brown 3-ply, but I'm not going to have enough. So I do think I will have more of the brown left. And even if I don't have enough of it, I can order more, which I should probably do that sooner than later. So I was thinking, well, maybe I would just add stripes to the sweater.
Yeah.
To extend it. So I think that will look okay. You know, if I have like that barber pole yarn mixed with a solid.
Yeah, I
but
think
it's the same color. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, I think that would be really pretty.
We did have a conversation, though, just thinking about spinning. We did have a conversation. I called you. Do you remember I called you last week, I think, or this week? Right.
I want to know how that went. Yeah.
Well, so I'll tell people what happened. So, and this probably happens to a lot of people, is that your single, as you're plying it, one of your singles will break, and then you can't find the end on the bobbin. And that's what happened. And so I called you and I said, because you know, you have been spinning a lot longer than I have. You've probably had this experience too. And you said there are a couple of things to do. One of them is put the bobbin back on the spinning wheel and spin the opposite direction that you plied it. But loose. I mean, you don't have the yarn coming, because you're trying to find the end, right? So you just let it spin on there and it will sometimes just fly out.
Right.
That didn't happen.
I don't have too much luck with that. I haven't had too much luck with that technique either, but
that didn't happen. But I think what it did is it must have loosened it some way, because I finally took it off and I just took it out in the sunlight and I actually found the end.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's good.
So because I had done that before, took it outside in the light and I could not find it. So I do think that spinning must have jarred it some way that I could find it. But just the other advice you gave me too, and this doesn't help find the end, but just when you're spinning, don't let the singles pile up too high as you're spinning across the bobbin. Keep moving it across the hook sooner, because I sometimes, as I'm watching TV or I'm talking, I lose track of what I'm doing. And sometimes they get a little too high and then they can fall down onto the next row. Is that the right way?
Yeah, it's kind of like the next layer, the way I would.
Right. So I'm going to keep that in mind for next time, because it's happened to me more than once.
And a lot of people use something called a woolly winder. And Robert, from the very beginning, when I first got my spinning wheel, he was like, "This needs to have something where it's laying the thread down or the yarn down, going evenly all the way across and then coming back, like a fishing reel." And I'm like, no, you just move the yarn on the hooks. And then I discovered, this was back in 98. And then I discovered that there was this thing called a woolly winder that, I think that's what it's called, that does do that. It winds your yarn onto a bobbin more like a fishing reel would do. So you're not moving the hooks yourself.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I like to move the hooks because it helps me remember not to sit in one position, not to put my hands in one position, not to do things that could give you a repetitive stress injury. The more adjustments that you make to your body, the better. But a lot of people like to have that and just be able to get into that rhythm, and it, people think it helps, and it probably does, helps them make a more consistent yarn too, because every time you stop and then start again, you have the possibility of your yarn not being consistent. But I'm old school enough to think that moving the hook from one hook to another is good for you. But I also am guilty, as you are, of forgetting, and then, oh no. And the finer you spin, the worse it is. The more careful you have to be about that happening.
Yeah, and I also think too, if you have the single on the bobbin, and you just went and decided that you were going to wind it onto another bobbin or something. Not that you would, but like say you're just going to take it from the one bobbin and wind it onto another bobbin.
They put it onto like a storage bobbin.
Right. I think then you might not have as much of a problem. But when you put it on the Lazy Kate, it has to have some tension on it.
Yeah.
The bobbins that you're plying off of have to have some tension. Otherwise, if they move too fast, then it all starts twisting back onto itself. Right. And so I think that tension also then forces the single down into the layers.
Yes.
And I don't know how to get around that other than, as you said, change more frequently.
Yeah. And the other thing that I have done with my Lazy Kate when I've wanted to make a try to be super consistent in my plying, I was taking a class and I was trying to follow, the instructions of the class. And so on our wheel, the Lazy Kate on the little Herbie is connected to the wheel. And I mostly ply from the Kate on the wheel. But if I have a yarn that I think is going to be really temperamental, what I learned in the class I took a while back, is that if you have the Kate away from you, it gives the yarn a chance for the twist to even out in the singles. And so if I have something that I think is not going to behave nicely, I'll take my Kate off and, put it behind me like 4 or 5 feet, kind of prop it up behind me 4 or 5 feet. And that does help because it doesn't get so tight. You don't have that tightness when you're trying to pull it up from the bobbin instead of out from the bobbin.
Yes, and and so we have the same wheel, and I find that I tried plying with the Lazy Kate attached to the wheel, the way it's designed. It was a nightmare because I was not able to do it. So you had shown me that trick, and so now I always I sit in my chair in the study, watching TV, which is probably part of my problem with my plying. And then I put the Lazy Kate behind me, and I block it with the table leg to try and hold it up because you want it to stay upright and not have the bobbins hit anything, so that stops them. The other thing is, Kelly, do you remember when I got the Ashford wheel?
Yeah.
It came with a Lazy Kate.
Oh, okay.
And so I tried that too. And it's basically, it's like two, posts that stick up, wood posts that stick up, and then the bobbins go in there. Ours are put in perpendicular to the ground, right? These bobbins are parallel, but there is nothing to slow them down. So they just, and I thought, well, maybe it'll be easier. No. It did not work at all. I think that's just going to be for storing bobbins because they look pretty.
So my Wyatt wheel has a Kate like that built into the wheel, and it does not have any tensioner on those bobbins. And so what I've done is I've taken the springs that do the tensioning for the little Herbie, and I just put them on there. So you might try. It might not fit the same springs, or those springs might not be long enough. Depends on how long the what are they called? The sticks that go through the bobbin are. But if you can find springs to go on the end of them to provide a little bit of tension, that might be a better
hardware store probably and get
that might be a better Kate, because you're not pulling up from the bobbin, you are actually pulling out from the bobbin, and it's a little bit easier to keep your tension even in that case. But you have to you really need to have some tension on the bobbins in the Kate.
Right. I think I'm gonna bring that Lazy Kate from the Ashford to the hardware store, because what I've discovered, men love anything to do with spinning wheels. They'll be like, oh, like they're gonna love it.
They'll help you
because it's engineering, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Get some assistance with those springs for sure.
So that's it for me with projects.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you didn't have to waste yarn. You know, you didn't have to cut through your yarn, because just to finish that conversation, the last resort to try to find your end is really just to cut the yarn and start spinning or start unraveling. I've just cut the yarn and then started plying from that section, just to wait to see what happens. And sometimes it makes a tangle, and then you have to cut even more off. And sometimes you've found the end, and sometimes you end up, your cut end, you ply back to the one that was hidden, and then you can find where you need to start up again. So, but that's not much fun, because you often will end up having to unwind a lot of yarn.
Before put it in the compost pile. Yep. And I was really hoping, and I'm glad it didn't happen, because I want to use every bit of bit of it that I can. Yeah. In fact, I even I've had some sections that have, when you're plying and you get the twist in one of the singles, but you can't get it out, and it ends up just plying into the three, and that's not nice. I've cut some of those out, but I saved them.
Yeah.
Just in case I need it for something. And then also when you skein the yarn on the Nitty Naughty, and then you have to tie it in 4 places. Well, you don't have to, but I do tie it in 4 places. I have some waste yarn, some other commercial waste yarn that I tying the little, because each one say it's 4 inches.
Right.
How many knit stitches is 4 inches? Like maybe I could get maybe that 4 inches is what I'm going to need,
Your yarn chicken stitches.
Yeah. So I have my little stash of, and also, on the Nitty Naughty too, it doesn't always, as you're winding, it doesn't always, the 2 ends don't always meet. So sometimes you have to unravel a bit. And so that'll be 18 inches, 20 inches or something. And so I've been saving all of those.
Sometimes what I do there is I'll take waste yarn and tie it. It depends on how precious the yarn is. Most of the time I don't do this, but if I'm trying to keep as much yarn as possible, I'll tie waste yarn to the end of my hand spun, and then use that waste yarn to finish the loop around, and then tie it to the starting end.
Oh, and that's a really good idea too.
That saves you, a yard. Less than a yard, but it saves you. It saves you from having to throw that little piece away. So you maybe haven't had a lot happening with your knitting, Marsha, but I had a finish-a-palooza.
Woohoo!
I'm sure you can see it in the show notes. Finished. So the biggest finish of all was Frog and Toad. Frog and Toad are finished and delivered.
Well, and I want to ask you about that too.
Yeah, so they turned out so cool. I was so happy with how they turned out. And I definitely have somewhat of a desire to knit them again. So we'll see if that actually comes to pass, but
so and were they a big hit?
They were a big hit. Yes. So I've had my second vaccination, and that was right before Easter. And then, so I was going to deliver them on Easter, but I didn't feel well. So I just stayed home that day, laid low. And, the reaction, it wasn't fun, but it only lasted a day. And I think if I had been a little less stubborn, the nurse at the vaccination site, she said, if you're not feeling well after the vaccine, go ahead and take a Tylenol or, go ahead and take Tylenol or Advil. That's fine. And I know when they did the trials, they didn't tell people, don't take anything after you have the vaccine. And so I'm sure people did who didn't feel well. And, the vaccines are 95%, 90%, something like that effective, in the trials with people possibly taking something afterwards. But I had gotten it into my head that you want your immune response to kick in. And I in talking with one of my colleagues, she said, that's not really logic. That's not really that logical. Even though it seems logical, it's not really the way the body works. But I had kind of thought, well, when you're sick, you kind of want that response to happen. And so, as much of letting your immune system deal with the problem as you can is good. And so, maybe not take something right away. So I didn't. And I think I would have felt much better if, as soon as I started feeling a little sick, I had taken something. But for some reason, I thought, no, I should probably let my body just do this. Anyway, I don't think that's not really good biological logic, according to my biology teacher friend at school and the nurse at the vaccine clinic. So if anybody has their next vaccine coming, listen to what they say. When they tell you if you don't feel well to take something, I would say take something. But anyway, enough of that. I didn't get to deliver them on Easter. But on Tuesday after Easter, my mom, who's been vaccinated fully and met her 14 days, she had like what my Aunt Pat calls her Freedom Day, when her vaccine was, fully the 14 days afterwards, after her second vaccine. And Aunt Betty had passed her Freedom Day, and Dennis had passed his Freedom Day. And Kai, who runs the Post No Bills Brewery, my nephew, he'd had his Freedom Day. Anyway, so we all met at Post No Bills, even though I really hadn't had my Freedom Day. We all met at Post No Bills, and Sarah brought the kids. Of course, Post No Bills is a brew house. So we just sat outside. They couldn't even come up on the patio, so they were down. They were down out from us a little ways. But I went out there with them and gave them their presents, and Faye was really happy with her Frog and Toad. She had never read the books before, so she was excited about that. And then, of course, there was a little bit of throwing of Frog and Toad between her and her brother. Which I knew was going to happen. I mean, they're stuffed things, so it doesn't really matter, but it was kind of funny. That's the first thing they do, is start throwing them back and forth. And then, taking off the clothes, putting on the clothes. She was having a good time with them. So yeah, very big hit. This Frog and Toad project was a very big hit. So she's now taking them to the grocery store to teach them how to grocery shop, according to Sarah. Because they've never been to the grocery store before. So anyway, she's having fun with them.
Very cute.
Yeah. And I had a great time making them. So a lovely pattern, really well done. Yeah. So
I'm looking at your picture on Ravelry. They're very cute. And their mouths and their eyes. That's very well, and their little toes, and
it just there's every little detail about them is fun. And every time I did a new little detail, it made them even better. So I think it's a really fun. It's a really fun knit. And there are just so many things. I just kept telling Aunt Betty, "Oh my gosh, I'm so delighted by this." She's like, "I don't think I've ever seen you so delighted by your knitting before." but the little knees and fat little calves. And anyway, very, very cute project and well received. So I finished that. I finished the iced matcha socks last night. So they're done. And I did have to redo the toe on one of them. Thinking of sock toes and Robert, it kind of made me laugh. I decided I was going to just follow the pattern and not just do the toe I always do. And it's slightly different. I mean, it wasn't wildly different. So I don't think it was the pattern. I think it was more that I jumped the gun on how... I think it was two things. I think I jumped the gun on how soon to do that first toe, which often happens to me. It's like, oh, yeah, they're far enough. I'm ready to do the toe. And really, they could have used another 1/4 inch of length. And then I can't remember exactly in the pattern, but the number of stitches that people typically decrease to before they Kitchener, I've actually found that I like to have more than that. So, like, I'll use at a minimum 16 stitches on my needles when I Kitchener. So, and I think, like, when I was first making socks, I want to say they were having me go down to like 10 or something.
Yeah, I usually leave 10. So what's your thinking? Why?
It cramps my toes.
Oh, okay.
They just seem a little smaller. I just like I just like to have a more blunt end to the toe. Here we are.
You don't like looking at the pointy toes in your drawer. The dresser drawer.
Yeah. Except it's, for some reason, it just feels more comfortable on my foot to have a little bit wider length. And I don't think of myself as having particularly wide feet, especially when I was younger. But I do have now on one foot a pretty good sized bunion. And so maybe that's why, maybe my foot is just wider at that end now. And so anyway, I took that one sock out and added to the toe, and now I'm done. So the pattern's cool, very cool. We talked last time about how I was thinking about making a pair of them inside out.
Right.
But the thing I didn't think about is when you stretch them over your feet, that ribbing doesn't look that wobbly ribbing isn't wobbly anymore.
Oh, okay.
Right? So if you stretch them over your leg, it would just look like a 1-stitch stockinette ribbing. So I don't know. I would use that reverse pattern on something that didn't have to stretch. Because then you could actually see how that ribbing wobbles in and out. But the right side of my socks, I really like that. I really like the pattern. I think it would be a good one for a highly variegated yarn. Mine is a little bit variegated. It's a little more variegated than tonal, but it's not a really wild variegation. But I think in a pretty wildly variegated yarn, this would make a good pattern for that too, because it would break up that. It might break up and not that pooling is bad, but it just kind of gives another texture to the way the yarn is changing. So those are done in time for the extremities knit along. And then I finished the reading in bed blanket.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And Robert will say it's not entirely finished because I'll tell you why. Because I washed it, and this is a little bit of a cautionary tale for people who want to weave with different yarns. Like when I do the blanket with the Gotland yarn that you bought, I really won't have to worry about this so much. Even if I'm doing wide stripes, it's all the same yarn.
Correct.
It's dyed different colors, but it's all the same yarn. But as you know, different yarn felts in different ways, right? And I always like to full a blanket so it doesn't feel like and look like burlap. And I like all the yarns to kind of snuggle together. And I maybe like it a little more felty than fulled. I don't know. I like that look of, nice, well-folded blanket. And what that means is that some of them had the tendency to shrink in more than others. So one of the yarns in there was the Tasmanian Comeback, and that shrunk up more than the other yarns did. And so I have a stripe. Well, I have different stripes. But like I have a 5-inch stripe and a 2-inch stripe of the Tasmanian Comeback, a couple different stripes. And those stripes shrunk in. So the edges, you could see it pull in. So I laid it out on a table and I pulled those out so they were even. I did pretty significant like block, stretching that part out. Tried to get all the edges as even as I could. And I thought I did a pretty good job. But I didn't want to leave it on the table to dry. It was a nice breezy day and I thought I'm going to hang it up. So I took it out and I hung it up in the tree and then it blew. And so anyway, it ended up with like hanger marks. So even though I had made the edges straight, once I hung it up, now one edge is kind of wobbly. So it's not permanent. I have to just wet it and do that blocking process again and let it dry flat so it'll be straight. And it won't have little bumps where the clothespins were.
Right.
But so that's what Robert would say is, well, it's not done because did you re-wet it and straighten it out? No. But I'm really happy with it. It's got a nice drape to it. I used a twill threading, a point twill threading, so it's like denim, right? Twill is like denim. So the diagonal goes up and then turns around and comes back down for a point twill. So it's got some diagonal interest in it. And then I have the horizontal stripes of the different colors. And if I wanted to avoid that differential shrinkage, what I think would have been a good strategy would be to, first of all, have more shuttles than I have. So that I could stripe the yarns in a smaller section. So like throw 2 weft picks of one color, throw 2 weft picks of another color, throw 1 or 2 weft picks of a third color, just alternating like I did in the warp. The warp doesn't have any one thread more than a few times in a row.
Yeah.
And if I had done that with the weft, I wouldn't have had any worry. But because I had a limited number of shuttles, I thought, I'll just use this one shuttle and, fill it with one color, use it up, fill it with another color, use it up. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
So it's actually in stripes. But super happy with it. I twisted the fringe. That took a while, but I did a certain number of strands, twist it one way, another group of threads twist it the same way, and then ply them back on each other and knot it. So I don't usually do things with fringe, but I have fringe on this blanket. So yeah, I'm super happy with it. I have not yet used it to read in bed, but maybe tonight.
And you don't have a finished picture of it.
I don't. I have to take a picture of it.
And then I thought when you were talking about Robert, about like saying it's not really completed.
Yeah.
I thought he said something the other day, and I thought, what was it about weaving in ends? And I looked at it's on Instagram. He said the front of the garage is complete, and complete is in quotes. And then in parentheses, he says, I do have a few ends to weave in, touch up.
Oh, that's funny. I guess he's using that as all the last little bits that you have to do before the project is actually finished. That's funny.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's a good expression.
Yeah, no, it is.
At least we all know what he means when he says that. Yeah. His family's probably like, what?
Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah.
He's picked up our jargon. Yeah.
Just a few ends.
Anyway, and then anything else? Have you started anything?
I haven't started any. Well, I haven't started any new knitting projects. I still have the crochet blanket, and I've been off and on working on that. Nothing really new to say there. For a while, I'll just be working on squares and octagons. But I did start. Once I got the blanket done, I thought, okay, I'm going to put the next Jane Stafford project on my table loom. So I had already wound the warp for it, and as I put it on, and I did a little weaving I did a little weaving of the sampler. In fact, I'm knotting ends right now. It's a 7-yard warp, so I cut off I think it's a little more than a yard that I've woven so far. It's a purple silk. It's the same purple, the coned purple yarn that I used for that sweater, the cherry vanilla.
Yeah.
That I made. I held a strand of this along with a strand of gray linen. I think those were the 2 yarns I used for that sweater. And I love that sweater. And I've had this yarn, oh my God, for a long time. I think I bought it in the early 2000s. And I thought, I think I'll use this. The sample that Jane is weaving is a purple bamboo. And it just reminded me that I had this yarn. So I went and got it, and that was the yarn I wound for the warp. And I also used it for the weft. And it's the weave structure that I am practicing is called Huck. And it's a lace weave structure. And I don't have a picture of it either. I'll take a picture for you to see while we're talking here.
Oh, yes.
Huck lace is related to canvas weave, which is the last episode. So it was kind of similar. It has kind of a similar look. There are some differences. But this was, just a little experimental piece that I've done. And so now I'm knotting the fringe on this. I'm not actually sure I'm going to leave it with fringe or if I'm going to hem it. It's just a sampler. It's long enough that it could be a scarf, but I don't typically wear scarves. I mean, I don't know. And I may give it away to somebody at some point. But I think I just might keep this as a sampler and hang it on the wall in the studio.
Yeah, yeah. It's nice.
So I have maybe 6 more yards. I think it was a 7-yard warp. So I have 5 to 6 more yards to play around with. I don't have enough of this yarn to continue using it for very much longer as weft. So I'm going to have to get creative with what I use as my weft yarn, which could be kind of fun. So, but yeah, I'm keeping up with the Jane Stafford Guild, this is a first. This is the first year I've ever woven along and not just watched the videos for, while I was knitting or, before bed or whatever. So yeah, I'm actually doing what the video is talking about. So that's been fun. But that's it.
Nice.
So I have a kind of alarming status of nothing on my knitting needles. I do have ends to weave in and pictures to take for a couple of projects. My sweater, for example, that striped sweater, the striped pullover. I still have ends to weave in there, but yeah, nothing is actively on the needles. That's a little odd.
Yeah.
So,
well,
stay tuned. There'll be something next time.
Yeah. Well, since we've covered projects, we should talk about the winter weave along since we've been talking about weaving. Yeah. It actually ended. And should we say anything about it before we talk about our prize winners?
Well, just that it was really fun. And we had, I think, over 600 posts in the chat. Of course, it was going on since, November. But lots of really good discussion in the chat and some people that I always like it when like an episode will strike a chord with somebody and somebody who's never posted before will post in the episode thread and say, oh, I was just listening and you said such and so. It's always fun to hear from people. I mean, of course, it's fun to hear from people that I feel like I know online already. But it's fun to see new faces show up. And this year in the Winter Weave Along, there were a lot of new faces who showed up, and that was fun. It was nice to get to know some people that had not participated in the Ravelry group until now. So that's been fun.
So should we just start with our prize winners then?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So I'm going to go first.
Okay.
Before we go on, we should just say too that we picked names, just the random number generator. So
and mostly from the finished object thread, although I did also select one from the chat thread.
Yeah. So this is going to, the first three are from the finished objects. And our first winner is number 2, which was Joanne Carroll, Joanne from Santa Cruz. And I want to make a comment about this too, that she made woven pot holders from with a pot holder loom. And I had one of those as a child, and I had a huge bag of they're kind of remind me like hair bands, kind of. They're that you stick on that loom, and then I think you crochet around the edge to finish them. And I remember I had one of those, and I made so many of them that I started walking around the neighborhood knocking on doors trying to sell them, which you would never let your child do now. But anyway, that's what I did.
Did you actually sell any?
Yeah, I did. But
cute.
But I can't believe that, in this day and age, you would never let your child just go and walk around the neighborhood and knock on neighbors that we didn't know, But anyway,
we did that all the time, selling Girl Scouts. While I was in Girl Scouts, I was in Bluebirds campfire.
Yeah.
Selling campfire mints and oh my gosh, and
I was in
the number of candy bars that we sold for school things. Yeah, we did that all the time.
Yeah, I was in campfires, and we sold campfire mints, and we actually literally just went and knocked on people's doors. Or now nobody does that at all. They're all, anyway. But that's another rabbit hole conversation that we go down.
True.
But anyway, so congratulations, Joanne.
Yeah.
And Kelly, do you want to announce the second one?
Sure. Yeah. So the second one is a weaving book, and I haven't purchased it. I'll go ahead and purchase it and have it sent directly. And since we had quite a few weavers using rigid heddle looms, it's a choice, one of 2 books, either the Marguerite Porter Davison red paperback book, which is the paperback version, newer version of the one that I always use to find interesting weave structures. So that's for a 4-harness loom. And then, or there's a Liz Gibson rigid heddle book that has 17 projects in it. And so depending on which kind of weaver you are and which book you would like, I will send you one of those 2 books. So the winner of that, number 40, Tea and Knitting 2, this is Colleen in Ohio. And she made napkins as her first double heddle project. And I think she has a rigid heddle loom and bought a second heddle, is what she did. Because I did see she was weaving on a cricket in one of her project pages. And then she also made a scarf later on in the weave along and had posted that as well. So congratulations, Colleen, and just let me know which book you would like and your address, and I'll get that sent along.
And I have to just interject. I made a mistake on the first prize winner, Joanne. I didn't say what she won.
Oh, how do they do that on the game shows? Well, tell Joanne what she won.
Yes, Joanne, I do apologize. I'm sorry. I actually am reading notes, believe it or not. So a pair of Christmas dish towels that, Kelly, that you wove. Joanne, also, I know you contact us and send us an email or through Ravelry, and we'll get your address and get those to you. So, okay. And then I will, the third one is a class that was generously donated by Erica of Weevolution. And she has a great website for weavers with projects and discussions and classes and lots of resources. And the winner of that is number 51, Hettycraft. And she is also in Santa Cruz. We have a little bit of a Santa Cruz.
We had a large Santa Cruz contingent in the Weave Along this year, I have to say. Mm-hmm.
But Hetty she entered a lot. She had quite a few projects, but number 51 was some spring tea towels that she made. So
yeah, she was a weaving machine, and I think she's new to having a floor loom, if I'm remembering correctly. She's a relatively new weaver, and maybe was weaving with a rigid heddle at first, or maybe last summer, and then started and then got I'm mistaken. I think she has a table loom that she bought a stand and treadles for, because I was asking her about her stand and how she liked it, because I have also a table loom, and I was trying to decide, do I want to buy a stand, or do I want to put it on just a card table, or do I like having it on the 6-foot table and that I just cart in from the garage when I need it. But yeah, I do think she's a relatively new weaver as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. And then the next prize is a gift certificate, a $70 gift certificate for the Jane Stafford Guild, or for the Jane Stafford website. You can use it toward whatever you like. You can use it toward a guild subscription. You could use it for yarn or kits. She has equipment on her site. She has quite a few different things on her website. And so a gift certificate for her site is going to Cindy Q, our friend in Washington.
Yes.
Now, Cindy Q, she made a queen size blanket. And she had a large collection of hand spun. Sounds familiar. And over the years, had just been spinning, and certain hand spun she didn't have a purpose for, and so she just been collecting it, and she put them all together and made a beautiful blanket, sort of, I want to say purples, blues, grays, all from her stash. And yeah, that was a fun project to see, and she finished it fairly early in the weave along, if I'm remembering correctly. She talked about it, from the stage of getting out all the yarn and identifying what she had, and then planning the project and everything. But once she got going, she really got that done quickly, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's huge.
It's huge, yes.
Queen size bed blanket. So very inspirational there. So Cindy, let me know. I think I have your email address, but just confirm for me your email address so I can get that gift certificate. It's like an e-card gift certificate that'll be emailed to you. So, all right, congratulations.
We also have a drawing for the chat thread. We're going to pick, we've picked one person from the chat thread, and they're going to also win a pair of Kelly's Christmas dish towels. And the number we drew is number 538, and that's Kian, also known as Suzanne, in Florida. And she posted a canvas weave sampler. So congratulations to everybody who participated. A couple things I just wanted to note about. I went through, I've been following everybody and noting what they were saying about their projects. And it seems like a lot of people were new. It was like their first time weaving on their new loom. In fact, it sounds like Suzanne, she just got a floor loom, and that's what she was weaving on her new loom. And there was also making things I hadn't thought about making out of hand spun, or I'm not sorry, out of hand woven material. Sorry. The one thing is, a lot of people made dish towels, right? And I was struck by Kelly 11 that she made pot holders where she, doubled up the fabric and then put an edging around it, and really cute pot holders. And they are, Kelly, you told me that it's called overshot is the technique.
Oh, yeah.
And it really beautiful. And the other thing she did too was she made tote bags, a tote bag out of the dish towels. Yeah. Which I thought was a really clever idea.
Really clever. I have a dish towel addiction, and that means that my dish towels take up 2 drawers in the kitchen, plus a part of a shelf in the upstairs linen closet. And so, yeah, that's a really good idea for a dish towel warp. If I feel like making dish towels, but I don't find another drawer to put them in. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then the other person that was interesting too was Miss Isabel, and she made shawls using an elongated hexagon pin loom. And those were really interesting too. Yeah. And a pin loom is something, it's not a huge investment. You can just make one. I actually watched a a YouTube video about how you can make your own pin loom. So that was interesting. And then, Sane One, she talked about it was the first time seaming a weaving project. I never really thought about that. As I'm assuming, Kelly, you know more about this. It's where you're taking two pieces, I guess, and you're seaming them together to make a larger,
Right.
To make like a blanket or an afghan.
Something wider, yeah. Like Stella last year made a baby blanket, seaming the two strips. Well, Hetty made panels that she didn't seam them, but she hung them as a closet door,
yes.
which I thought was interesting. But yeah, even when you have a narrow width loom, you can still get a wider width piece of fabric by seaming them together.
It was very interesting what everybody was doing. I enjoyed seeing all the finished projects.
Yeah, I did too.
Really fun.
I have to say, this year, I've never really been a big fan of overshot. I always think, well, I have some overshot quilt scraps or, coverlet scraps that I bought at the quilt show. Oh gosh, a number of years ago, the Pacific International Quilt Show. They had a booth that was selling all kinds of things. But one of the things that they were selling, they had this big bin of cut up pieces of old coverlets, hand-woven coverlets. And those are traditionally done with overshot. And I like it for that look, right? For the sort of bedspread, old-fashioned colonial style coverlet look. But I had never really thought, I would love to weave something in overshot. But there were several overshot projects this year. I think there was a class going on that people were taking. And out of those several projects is like, okay, this is kind of inspirational. This is not your grandmother's overshot. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking forward. I don't know when we'll do overshot in the guild, but I may just put something on the loom and work on overshot. The only overshot that I've ever woven was some pot holders, some Christmas pot holders. So a real small project that, just took me a couple of weeks at the weaving class. I wasn't really studying it or anything. I think the loom was actually maybe already even warped. I was just weaving off an old warp from someone else. So it wasn't like I really learned anything. I mostly just followed the directions. But I was really impressed with the kind of versatility of overshot that I didn't really think of. So
yeah.
It was fun.
Another year we'll start.
And now we're ready to start our, not quite yet, but pretty soon we'll be starting our summer spinning.
Yes, we'll talk more about that later, but we're planning on doing that again this year.
Thank you to everyone who participated. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I think a lot of people learned a lot. It was really informational and educational and fun to get on the thread every morning and read what people were doing and making. So thanks to everyone.
And so just a reminder, we touched on this briefly earlier, but our extremities knit, crochet along, or any other type of craft you want to do for your extremities. And that is underway, and that ends April 25th. And the prizes are the pattern for the Abington Mitts by Jennifer Lassonde and the Coffee Socks collection by Dots Dabbles Designs. So get your finished objects in. I'm saying that to myself, Kelly.
Yeah, let's see. What's today? Today's the 14th, so you have 11 days, Marsha.
Yeah.
And how many rows?
5.
Of how many stitches?
12.
So 60 stitches in 11. All you have to do is 6 stitches a day.
Well, maybe tonight.
All right. You officially jinxed yourself.
I know. It's not happening tonight. Anyway. No, you know what I need to say is I am not doing that tonight.
Right.
That's what I have to say.
Too much going on. I'm not doing that tonight.
I am not doing that tonight. So we'll see what happens. Now that I've put that out there, we'll see what happens tonight.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, do we have anything else?
No,
I don't think we do.
I don't think so either.
Well, I will get off the phone and I will go put that final coat of paint on my garage.
All right. Yeah, I have papers to grade. Woohoo!
Put on some latex gloves.
Well, actually, no, they're not really papers. But yes, I have.
Oh, they're not actual paper.
They're not
okay.
actual papers. I have virtual papers. I have grading to do, is what I should say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, integration practice to grade. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Been fun.
We'll talk in 2 weeks.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit 2usfiberadventures.com.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2 U's
doing our part for World Fleece.